Hi, everyone. It's good to see everyone's faces, new and old. I am Beena Shah, founder and CEO of Project 8P Foundation, as most of you, I believe, know. And we have a great team that is hosting this data collection event with us. I wanted to make an announcement that Katie Syverson, who co-chairs the Patient Leadership Board and is also an 8P mom, she is officially the patient engagement manager for supporting our new initiative here, as well as components of the data collection that you're about to hear. So I can go ahead and start with the first slide. So for those that have been with us since we formed at the end of 2018, I wanted to just share some amazing things that we've all done together in the last few years. And as you can just see by a quick visual, in 2019, we had over 100 volunteers and we hosted our first conference with 250 attendees, which was just amazing to have all these families together and really launch initiatives for our mission to accelerate research and find treatment and unite our community. And I think that it's really important to see all of these achievements that, we've done by our larger group of clinicians and researchers that are so vested in helping us achieve this mission. And we've launched a commission to think about chromosome disorders at large and how we can group together with similar diseases to better understand treatments for us. We've launched our open science research roundtables, and we have a 2-year research roadmap now. We also have a lot of different partners and just an amazing community that, is represented here on this call, but just internationally, which is amazing. So I want all of you here to celebrate this. This is a big, big deal for a small orphan rare disease group. And you're all a part of this. Next slide, thanks. So today, we're at this data collection event. Want to make it fun, but I know there's some dry content in here, so hopefully you guys can just smile along, and we will be interactive at the end of the presentation. But I wanted to just share the importance of all the different components of what we're talking about today that we may have started collecting or we anticipate collecting in the future, and putting together a lot of pieces of information that represent the 8P heroes. So on the bottom left, there's patient-reported surveys and a lot of different questions you can answer about yourself, your family, your 8P hero. And, in the hospitals, when we go, we do a lot of tests. So some of those are images of our brain. The clinicians or doctors we see have observations and data as well, medical records. And I'm moving along. I'm in the middle of the middle circle. You can probably see my cursor here, but published and unpublished data. Looking at some of the biospecimens we've collected and even comparing some of the lab results that you do when you draw your blood and might see things, being able to look at our researchers and all the results they may see in their laboratories that may not necessarily be published, or may be results that weren't what they anticipated. And so being able to aggregate all of that and link it. In the future, we hope to do more videos of our 8P heroes to make things actually easier on us as parents and caregivers to see over time the improvements and progress and questions that we have, as well as some advanced, pretty cutting edge sequencing information that we have a partnership with and hope to grow that as well. And so all of those are going to be components of what we're going to analyze, and again, part of the big goals that we have. And I'll pass it along to Katie to really talk about this big initiative that we've just launched.
Thanks, Beena. So yeah, as Beena said, we have a lot that we've accomplished, but we also have a lot we plan to do, which is why we launched the My Hero initiative, which was really created to support our patient-driven goals. These include delivering a high-quality standard of care, partnering with global difference makers, accelerating research for 8P-related disorders, and of course, most importantly, empowering our community. This includes all existing and future programs and partnerships that will involve data and biospecimen collection, aggregation, and analysis. Currently, we have 3 components to the My Hero initiative, which you're going to hear about today. We move on. Okay, here's our 3 components. We currently have the Chromosome 8p Registry and Biorepository. Many of you may already be in our registry. What we're going to talk about today is the RareX 8p data collection program. And then there's another component in it here that some of you may have participated in, whether at one of our conferences or through Colorado Children's, but it's the Multidisciplinary Neurogenetics Clinic. As you can see from this table that we organized, the focus shifts a little bit. What's involved shifts a little bit, but at the very bottom, which is actually cut off, I think, the most important thing to know is that all 3 components aggregate, analyze, and are linked together. Next slide, sorry. So if you're interested in participating, we kind of put it into 3, kind of a roadmap for you, 3 steps. Sign up for the Chromosome 8p registry. If you're not sure about your current registration status, you can go ahead and email me. I do want to pause here and note that if you participated in the 2019 study through Columbia, that does not mean your information is in the registry. Once you're signed up for the registry, you can consent for that data to be sent to the registry, but there has been a lot of confusion with this. The registry is actually separate. That study through Columbia has been published and is linked on our website as well. Step 2, RareX is going to take us through their platform today. And then, as I said, step 3 is the clinic visits. If there are any questions, I want to pause here, make sure there's no confusion. Feel free to put it in the chat too.
Clear as mud, I guess, right? All right. So anything else from the 8p guys?
Yeah, no, that's it. So I guess I can introduce you, Vanessa. Megan, is Megan still?
Megan is here, yes.
Oh, great. Okay, great. So we have amazing team here that is part of the RareX data collection program. That's step 2 that's on the slide. And I wanted to introduce Megan O'Boyle, Vanessa Vogel-Farley, and Kelly Wentworth. They're going to basically take you through pretty lengthy agenda, but we really wanted to get all of your questions answered. And so again, this is kind of focusing on that step 2 part of this new data collection portal and why it's really an important piece of our Chromosome 8p puzzle.
Great. Vanessa, do you want me to take the slides or are you good?
Just tell me when to go.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Megan O'Boyle. I'm the parent of a 22-year-old with Phelan-McDermott syndrome. And I have been involved in helping collect data for many years. And what I bring to RareX is how not to do it. Because back in the day, every group was like yours was told to collect data, but they didn't tell us how to do it, where to do it, and how important doing it the right way was. So that is what RareX is doing on behalf of your community. So I'm going to try and go through these slides super fast because slides are boring. And that way you all can ask lots of questions. You can put the questions in the chat. I can try and watch for hands. Caitlin and Kelly and Vanessa can help me out there too. So next slide. So RareX is, we are part of Global Genes. It is a nonprofit. It was born out of a lot of frustration that organizations and communities like yours weren't getting proper data collected, getting it in the hands of the right people. And so we are there to provide that at no cost to anybody. We collect data, which we'll talk about tonight. We can connect to data, which is especially important to you guys because we're going to connect to some of your other data. And most importantly, we're going to share data. When I talk about sharing data tonight, I always mean de-identified. The only people that see the identified data is Rare X. Your organization will see de-identified aggregate or summary data. Also, you will be able to have access to your own data. You can share it any way you want. We don't own the data. Your organization does not own the data. You as the participant own and manage the data, and I'll talk more about that. Data is not sold to anybody, including biopharm or pharmaceutical companies. Next slide. So I have a child that does not speak, does not sleep, has GI issues, has epilepsy, has autism. And so I have a taste for what your lives are like. And I don't believe in putting any burdens on families that aren't unnecessary. So what's in it for you? As far as I'm concerned, one of the greatest things is that you will be able to get data back and see how your answers may compare with other people's. I think that's better than any sort of Amazon card. The researchers will see it from around the world, and I'll explain more about this, but there is absolutely going to be more eyes on this data. This will also should the more people you have analyzing the data should speed up. The ability to change your information at any time. This is true of any online database. It would be true of your 8P registry, but it's not usually true of in-person clinics. My daughter's in an NIH natural history study. We only come in 1-2 days every May. So if something happens in April or July, I have to either remember to report it in May, or when they stop seeing us, they'll report on what they saw last. So I will encourage you more than once tonight that this is your data. This is for your community around the world. This is only as good as you all make it. And you should be in there at least once a year to update it. And an update may mean nothing's changed. An update does not involve answering all the questions again. It just means changing what has changed. I would encourage you to do that more than once a year. And a lot of people throw the word natural history study around. I think it's confusing. What you all need, what researchers need, what biopharma needs is to see how 8P progression, what is the progression of disease in your child across all of the patients. And if you answer these surveys once, we get a snapshot, which is super. If you answer them at least once a year, we get a video. That's progression of disease. And when researchers access your data, if they access your data 5 years from now and you've updated 5 times, then they will see the progression of the disease. Also, your ability to manage the data. You can share your data very broadly, or you can put some limitations on it. I'll talk more about that. Next slide. This is an example from another disease that said we could share some data. The disease is Wiedemann-Steiner. That's why I highlighted in WSS. This is not data from your disease, but it is an example of what data you could get. Here it shows that 27 people answered a survey, and for instance, 70% reported autism. In this particular disease, there were many patients that could not get an autism diagnosis because their children seemed too social. And they argued that had they had this data, they could have gotten the diagnosis many, many years earlier. So this is data that you will be able to use. It's not just doing a favor for a researcher who might lead to a treatment down the road. This is for you now. This is data that you could bring to a doctor or bring to an IEP meeting. It won't be immediately available. It will be made available to your organization on a regular period, and they will share it with you. But this is what I think is incredibly valuable. Next slide. This is just another data point. This just shows that of the 73 people that answered the head to toe survey, this essentially is their characterization of their disease. And it's across all systems of the body. And I'll explain more about why that's so important. Next slide. So this is how it generally works. The researcher has to know your disease exists. Then they have to go knock on the door of your organization and say, hey, we heard you've got data, can we have it? Then your organization has to decide if that researcher or that project is worthy. They then share the identified data, and everybody hopes that something good happens with it. But we may never hear. At RareX, we're collecting data from many rare diseases that want to contribute. You will be the 45th. By the end of next month, we will have close to 60. But on the right, you see that there's researchers from around the world, and they don't have to know your disease exists. They don't have to have ever heard of 8P ever. They're going to go in and they're going to query data. They're going to ask questions like, about disease maybe, or about genetics, or more importantly, what if they go in there and say, I'm looking for patients, participants that have epilepsy, autism, and frequent ear infections. Well, guess what? They're going to find data on almost all of our diseases currently, which means they can look across diseases at symptoms. And this is going to become really important down the road when there are drugs developed for symptoms, not just for genetic conditions. Next. This is just to say that everything about how your data is collected, how it's stored, how it's used, how it's shared, all of that comes under our responsibility. We are legally, ethically, morally, financially responsible for all of this, which is taking the burden off of your organization. And those of you who are with us outside of the United States tonight will note that in the bottom of this triangle, we say country by country regulations. Even in Europe, different countries see GDPR in different ways. All of this slide is our responsibility. So we spent over a year on the informed consent, working with the data privacy attorney. We make sure that all the data is de-identified before it's seen. So you should feel really good about how this is being handled, and that burden is not put on you. Next slide. So what do you need to get started? You need, well, actually, you don't need a computer or a laptop. You actually can start this on your phone. I would say that the ultimate experience when you get into some of the bigger surveys is to do it, on a computer, but it is available on your phone. You need to set up your account. There'll be double verification. In terms of browsers, please don't use Microsoft Edge or Internet Explorer. You don't need a lot of time. I would suggest that you at least get enrolled, get through the consents, and there's multiple consents for a reason, I'll explain. Get through the data sharing and get your head-to-toe survey done as soon as possible. And if you can't do more than that, then schedule a time with yourself to come back. I've put a link in the chat. You can kind of listen with one ear and type with the other if you want to get started. But you don't have to do this all at once. You don't need all your medical records to get going on this. Next slide. This just shows your journey. So you're either going to get the link that I just shared, or the link that will be shared on your organization's website or in your social media. And you'll go, the first place you're going to go is a community page. There you'll see a beautiful picture of two young ladies from your community. And if you've got questions, you want to know if this is worth your time, there's an FAQ on that. And it's even available in different languages. Once you hit get started, everything for now is in English. We have 3 translations coming in 2023. Once everything is set up, you go through the first form, and then the password and everything gets set up. You're going to have 2 consents, one for yourself as a caregiver, and then your data sharing survey. And then when you add a patient, you are going to then consent on behalf of your family member, and also how they're going to do, how you want their data shared. And then you're off to the surveys. Next slide. And here's your beautiful community page. This is your front door. This is, if you enroll tonight and you get distracted and you don't finish, and a week from now you're like, I got to finish those surveys, can't remember the link. No problem. You're going to go to this link, 8p.rare-x.org. And that will take you here. And since you've already set up your account, you don't hit the red button, you'll hit the blue login button. If at any time you suddenly think, I need to know more about my privacy, I need to know what their terms of use are, it's readily available on this page underneath the red button, and also on every login page. Next slide. This first form is to help decide what consent you're going to get. So sometimes we're consenting on behalf of ourselves or on behalf of a minor child, or in my situation, I have an adult child, but I'm her guardian and I consent on her behalf. So, and there's also a question here about if you're living outside of the United States. And this has to do with different countries require different things. So we have different consents. I recommend, even if you are a caregiver that does not have 8P, that in this section, you check the box that you are a patient and you are a caregiver. And the reason is,
I can jump in if you want me to. Real quick.
that would be great.
Okay, so Megan is the patient engagement lead for most of our groups that are patient reported data only. You guys are a special case because you guys are part of the commission, as Katie and Bina had talked about earlier. And as My Hero initiative enables us to connect data sets and also and also collect biosamples and a couple other things. Right now, for the technical enablement for you guys to get the consent you need to give consent for your own biosamples or for that repository, that linkage, we do need you to click the patient participant as well, because then it gives you your consenting for your biosamples. It's just a process. So I know that it might not like sit right, but we have very little flexibility in how to change those names. So when you enroll, and if you're interested in ever either going to the clinic or if you're going to possibly give biosamples, please do choose both patient and caregiver, because it does allow us to, one, know that if you came to the Colorado conference, that data that you already had give back in the day, a couple of years ago, that we link that, as well as the biosamples that are already in the under RareX governance. So that's a place where sometimes it seems a little bit weird, but if you choose patient and caregiver, that gives us the most flexibility to make sure that you can enroll that way. If you additionally have a sibling, so Bina, I think, and there are a couple actual people here on here, they look a little familiar from Colorado. If you have a sibling who's interested in also giving a biosample to help research related to their 8P hero, this is something else. You'd enroll them as a patient as well, even if they're not a patient. This enables us to give them the right consent and everything like that. We are working to get this a little bit more clear, but for right now, that's what we do need to have you click to get to the right place. So just as an aside, if you have any questions during this, or you have any like, oh, I can't remember what happened. One, we're recording this. Two, if you email support or if you email Katie, we can walk you through it. We'll give you a call. We'll do a screen share and walk you through it so that you know that you're supported and you're choosing the right thing. And if you think you messed up, you can also email us so that we can fix it on the backside.
Great, thank you. Next slide. So this will be once you get yourself and your family member enrolled, then every time you come back, you will have the choice of caregiver or patient. And I'll show you more screenshots of, like, if you're like, I forget which one I'm in, we got you covered. Next slide. We're going to fly through these. You guys know how to set up an account, set up a password. You're going to get double verification. So next slide. We've already addressed this one, and then it says create a password and then change your password. Next slide. Again, this is when you come back, you're gonna this is your login. So if you go back a week from now, you're gonna come to this login. And again, if you have any questions, always, we are completely transparent. Please check on our policies. Next slide. There is an additional terms of use for Matrix. Matrix is the technical platform on which RareX is sitting or powered by. After you hit accept, you're going to go to the informed consent. I know when we do things like the Starbucks app, next slide, please, and iTunes, we scroll down and we say accept. I strongly encourage you all to read the consent. And if you skip it tonight, I encourage you to go back to it and read it, because it's meant to be very clear and it's meant to be very transparent, and you should not feel like you're reading a legal document, and you should feel fabulous about how your data is going to be respected and treated and protected. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. At the top of every page of the consent, there's information on how to reach the principal investigator. We also wanted to make this easy, so we have short answers for people like me who are a little less curious, and long answers for people like Vanessa who want to know everything. Next slide. Toward the end of the consent, Vanessa, go
This
ahead.
is, yep, this is a little bit because you guys are a little bit of a special case because you're participating in different ways. Towards the end of the consent, we added in these variables that allow us to open up different questions or different sub-study things based upon how you're enrolling this. So please check all that apply. Say that you may or have a rare disease, you're a parent or a caregiver, you're a family member other than a parent. So for all of these things, check all that apply. So if you're a sibling who's enrolling yourself because you want to be part of this, so check all that apply. These things, they may change as it gets a little bit clearer, but just as for right now, this is the most helpful for check at least those three, because it'll at least open us up for the consents that we need to for any of the additional sub-studies that we might be a part of to connect your data with.
Great.
Megan?
Yes. So on this one, I don't always pay attention, and I'm not going to blame you for not paying attention, but it's super important that you pay attention when you're filling out whether it's your name or whether it's your child's name, because this would provide for very dirty data if we got the two people confused. So just make sure that when you're putting in the names towards the end of the consent, because remember, you're going to have two consents. You're going to have your own, and then you're going to be consenting on behalf of your child. Next. So after you've consented for you, you're consenting that we're collecting this information, your name, your email, your address, and many other things. All questions are mandatory, but there are answers that such as prefer not to answer. This is all about you. And I believe with the state, you can't type it out. It is an abbreviation. So this is your demographics or general information.
The other
Okay.
part of this too is if you are a family that has multiple parents, or you are in a separated parent situation, we do have families that we enable people to enroll like the same child, essentially, that they can both participate in this data collection. So, and this also gives us the opportunity to say, okay, this is mom, this is dad, they're like all of that stuff. So when you're going into your demographics, make sure you're looking at, okay, this is me, I'm giving it for myself and my child. And then also when you go down, it'll tell us a little bit about family structure too, because when it comes to genetic presentations, we want to know who mom and dad are and where everybody kind of is in the situation.
Excellent.
Can we
So
go back
this-
to that last slide? There's a question on the, go back again. One more, sorry. Yeah, so when you're enrolling as a caregiver, for now, we need you to select all three of these.
Yep. And actually on the caregiver consent, there is another one that actually, so right now, apologies, this is a weird screenshot. So you can see the patient participant consent, it does have a different list of things. So on the caregiver one, I can't click through because we're not live, but it will say, you can just say caregiver, because on the caregiver participant consent, it's usually just going to say I'm the caregiver of that. And that's totally fine. Okay.
But then when you come in and you're filling out yourself as a patient, yes, you're going to check these three boxes, even if you do not necessarily have.
Correct. Yep. And it just enables us to open up additional things. Should I
Vanessa,
consent?
what if you're not the biological parent?
So if you are, you're a parent or caregiver. So if you're an adoptive parent, you are legally, so the consent is a legal document. It's the pinnacle of the contract. This is the legally binding document. So you're going to represent your legal relationship with the patient. If you are an adoptive parent, you are the parent or caregiver. That's what you are. You are, in all intents and purposes, that child belongs to you. That is your deal. So for sure, put in that you are the parent or caregiver. There is an opportunity that if you are, I click through here. If you are the legally authorized representative, so if your child is an adult, that is where you are going to choose. You are the legally authorized representative of a person who has or may have a rare disease. Because when your child turns the age of 18, you become a legally authorized representative. You can also say that you're a parent or caregiver. You are both of those things. You do not give up your parentage or anything like that, but you can choose both of those things. The legally authorized representative is another thing to let us know that you have the documentation that you went through the whole court system to get your legally authorized representative status. For our ethics and our IRB, so our protocol that goes along with this, they ask, how do you know that they have the proper documentation, that they've established that legal relationship with the adult, who they're providing data on. And this is the way that we get our information. So one of the things. We also do data pulls in terms of what birthday is, so that the patient is over the age of 18, and the assent and consent documents too. So this gives us a kind of a structure of the family, and also age and cognitive levels.
Vanessa, one more question. If your AP
Yeah.
hero is an adult,
You are the legally authorized representative of a person. Well, they will, in the pre-qualification questions, which we'll show, you're going to get, when you add that patient, so you're adding your AP hero after you enroll, you're going to say they are age of 18. And they're going to ask, the next question is, can they actually cognitively consent to participation? Meaning, are they going to be able to participate themselves, or are you going to be participating on behalf of them? Are they able to assent? Meaning that do they understand the whole participation aspect? If you say yes, then we're going to say, you know what, they need to set up their own account, because that way we know that there's some AP heroes that are completely able to enroll themselves. And we're going to say, if that is the case, they should really enroll themselves. They might need some help, but they should really enroll themselves. And we definitely push them back out and say that it seems, based upon the information you've given us, that you should probably this person should enroll themselves. So if they're an adult and they are the cognitive age that they're cognitively able to enroll themselves and consent themselves, that should be there. I'm a participant, and I have or may have a rare disease. If they are somebody who is not able to cognitively consent for themselves but assent, then you would get the consent form, and then they would get an assent form. So you're able to kind of, whatever based upon whatever the functioning level is of the individual who is the AP hero, you're kind of able to mix and match as to what they need for the legal consent and assent process. Should both biological parents have participant profiles? If both biological parents want to enroll and want to report on the child, yes, you should both enroll. The reason is that sometimes moms and dads have different experiences, different burdens of illness, different just different presentations in life. We want you to be able to report on those. I would say that I think there's some dads on here. Oftentimes dads and their experience in rare disease is much, much underrepresented. So I would love that if both parents are able to enroll, because then they can give their insights. That'd be fantastic. However, if that's not going to be the case, and mom's more active on that, that's totally fine too. But we have the opportunity to be able to do both.
Vanessa, in the case of the AP community, can the mother and the father and the children all be in the same account?
So how RareX structures it is, no, we do not allow them in the same account. The reason being is that sometimes, and the same thing goes that, go kind of back to the burden of illness aspect. Sometimes mom and dad's, their representation of what they think their child's, that answer will be is different. And that's actually very interesting in research. So what happens is if it's two parents reporting on the same child, we can compare those data points to say mom and dad's reactions to these things, or mom and dad's reporting to these things, is very different. I actually did a study in genetic, it was actually guilt in genetic conditions. And we asked mom and dad the same thing. They were on different accounts, and we looked at their differences and their guilt and everything that came across with genetic conditions. And so very different and so very stark when it comes to moms and dads. And so we want that to kind of be able to be separated, that you can always show each other in the end, but at the end of the day, when you're collecting that data, we do want it to be kind of separated so we can analyze it independently.
So I want to clarify. A mom typically is going to go in as a caregiver and click patient and add their child and add another child if they're going to be doing another child that's a control, a non-AP child.
Yep.
If the father also is likely to be giving a biosample, he would go into this completely into a different account and go through the same process the mom did. And he can choose to or not to add the same child that the mom did. I don't want them to feel like that the moms and dads have to answer two sets of surveys.
If you don't,
the moms and dads have to be in separate accounts.
Yeah. So if you don't want to report on the child, but you want to give your experience, because we do have burden of illness and quality of life questions that you as a parent get to fill out. So if you're like, okay, I know my wife has enrolled them, or I know my husband's enrolled the child, but I want to give my account of what the burden of this is, or what my experience is, you just enroll yourself. And that's all you need to do. And so what you're going to do is there's a question actually when you enroll yourself, like what patient are you connected to? And that's for us on the backside. So there's opportunities that way. That's why we want the whole full family kind of profile. But again, we don't want this to be overwhelming or burdensome. So at the beginning of the time, just do what you would normally do when you're enrolling or you're doing your doctor's appointments and that sort of thing. Who kind of takes lead on that? But know that there's an ability to get in there and give your insight as another patient, another parent, or a different relationship to the child.
Okay,
or
we're going to go
adult.
back to slide 25.
Okay.
We've just made this sound like that you're assembling IKEA furniture. It's not that
It's not that hard.
Once you start doing it, it's not going to be that hard, but we're here if you have questions. Slide 25 is or 26. Where are we? Okay, 28. So in slide 28 is where
we did this. Okay,
enter your disease. So at the bottom it says, are you a rare patient? And then you start to type in 8 and 8P will show up, and that is what you choose. If the patient has another rare disease, you click other and you type in what that is. This is not just about 8P, it's about the person's entire health. To that point, when you're answering questions, don't second guess. If your kid has a skin issue, but you don't think it has anything to do with 8P, that doesn't matter. We still want to know about the skin issue. Maybe there's a skin issue study that your family member could be part of. So don't second guess whether the questions have to do with the syndrome or not. Next slide.
The other thing is if you are being seen at a clinic that is affiliated with 8P, later on, when you get down into the sub-studies for the clinic, this is where you're going to denote your clinician. So this is another space, but you'll get instructions if that happens. It'll say go back to the clinician, and that allows the clinician to be able to see the data that you're entering on behalf of your child or your adult, and vice versa. It will allow you to see the data that the clinician enters on behalf of you when they're seen at the clinic. So that's also the space that you is a kind of an important place to denote. Is your rare disease that you're affiliating yourself with 8P? So it lets Bina and Katie know that you're saying, yep, I'm part of this 8P community. And when we send the data sources to them, we know to connect that, and then also the clinician aspect.
And if you're not in the study, don't worry about it. You don't have to answer the question.
Yep.
This is where you participate. You decide how you're going to share your data. I'm going to share it really broadly or have some limitations. And the beauty of this is something that you can change. So the first screen, you have two choices. You have to pick one. The first one says, I'll share my data with any type of researcher doing any type of research. And it gives examples such as research on age, race, and ethnicity. Or, you know what, for now, I think I only want to share my data with researchers doing health, medical, and biomedical research. That's perfectly fine. I clicked the first one. You can click either, but you have to click one. And you can always go back and change. I would say to date, majority of the people have clicked on one, but this is your decision. Next slide shows you don't have to pick any. You can pick one, both, or none. I picked none. It will explain in detail when you read it what it means. Essentially, the first box says, I want to share my data with every kind of researcher except basically drug companies, industry. And if you check that box, that means that if a researcher from a drug company is querying data and your family member qualifies for the query, if you've said no to them having access, then they'll never see that person's data. And you may decide a week later that you're going to say yes, and you go back and you change your answer. The next says, I will only share my data with researchers that have what's called IRB approval. You heard Vanessa talk about that. That's that at their university or their medical center that their review team of ethics and scientists have said, you know, you have our stamp of approval. That's your prerogative. I'm okay with some math major at Stanford who's looking for patterns in data having access, because who knows, they might come up with something novel. But this is your choice, and this is how you decide. Next slide. The remainder of the questions here are, we're taking a poll, and this is for everybody. So some of the questions may seem silly if you've already given a biosample, but essentially, do you have one? Where is it? Do you have medical records? Can we connect to them if that becomes possible? Nothing in the rest of the data sharing survey are you committing to anything. You're just giving us an idea of what you're willing to do or not do, so your organization can decide what they might who they might want to partner with in the future, or how they want to invest their funds. Next slide. Actually, go back one, Vanessa. On this, what is your other possible data sources? If you say yes, it's essentially saying, what other studies have you been in? Have you been in Simon Simplex? Have you been in Genida? Have you been in since Colorado Children's? You don't have to know exactly what the study was. You can, whatever you remember from it. But it's so that down the road, we can know whether a lot of you were in a study that maybe would be worth connecting to someday.
Yeah.
Again,
and I do also want to say that for this, it's really important in the My Hero initiative, because this is the place that also, if you're, if you're coming in as AP, which is, that's the first place, because that's our first filter. But this is another place that other possible data sources that lets us know that we need to reach out to them. So we already have a great relationship with Simon Simplex, and as they're getting their governance up to be able to link data in a better way, we're ready to go, right? So then we can connect it and we can make that an option for you when it becomes available. Same thing for 8P for the registry or the Children's Hospital of Colorado or any of the other ones. This gives us an idea, because what we end up doing is comparing governances to make sure that one, theirs was collected in a way that they could link, and we connect it on the backside. So this is kind of a very important place. Also, you don't have to say yes early. You can change your mind over the day. If you come into this, you're like, I'm not so sure how I want to share my data. I'm not so sure about this yet. You don't have to commit forever. You can go in the next month and change it. If you hear that there's a biopharma company coming into your space, and hey, I said no originally because I didn't want commercial people looking at my data, but now I'm hearing that Roche is interested. I just bring up a big company. I want to go in and change it. All you have to do is go in and change it on whatever the last slide is. So these things are flexible for you, that you can change it over time, that you don't have to go through the whole consent again. You can just change these options and add additional things in here.
Yes, and the answer to the last chat is yes. If you're in the 8P project registry, then I would mention it.
Yep.
On this last one is, I want to share my name and email with any organizations in this space. At this time, there's only one organization. It's called 8P Project. They're sponsoring this call. More than likely, if you're on this call, you've already shared your name and email with them, but that's all you're sharing. You're not sharing any medical data or any other contact data. That's also your choice. But
I do want to say, okay, this is a very important distinction. I know time, but this is a very important distinction for the My Hero thing. What ends up happening is when we talk about identified information and de-identified information, that means when your data is moving through an ecosystem, what's it attached to, okay? So for this, it's contact information. So Bina and Katie can know, here's your name and here's your email address, and they know you're in RareX, right? On the backside, through this consent process, both our side, RareX side, and 8P, there's a lot of other things that when you look in the consent and you look in how we manage data, there's ways to link that in a de-identified way. So your name is not traveling with it. And we're not linking based upon your name. We're linking based upon other things that you've given consent to. So I want to make it really, really clear that when you're filling this out, this is not in terms of linking it to your name and to your data, that it's kind of traveling around there. But Bina and Katie are dedicated to making sure that these data sets are linked, because it's the most possible answers that you're going to get for AP. So that's all kind of happening in a de-identified way to make sure that your privacy and your confidentiality and your child's privacy and confidentiality are maintained, but still enabling the research. So I'm just wanting to make it very clear that when you say yes to this, it's that Bina and Katie can reach out to you and add you to a newsletter, but all of the cool stuff and all of the data connection that's happening in the background with all those puzzle pieces that Katie talked about in the beginning, that is still happening. It's just in a different way, that it's not with your name or your child's name. So we can maintain all that confidentiality and privacy, and we take it very, very seriously on both sides. But I want to just put it out there that we're making it happen, and it's amazing. So
next slide, please. Because we only have 30 left.
I'm sorry.
Then you're going to add
20.
a patient, and that's your family member. Because you are enrolled as a patient, you're going to have access to all the same surveys. Well, you'll get the head to toe survey, and you can fill that out for yourself. And whatever you say yes for, you'll get other surveys. I'm more concerned right now with data about your child, so I would encourage you not to answer surveys about yourself at this time, and go ahead and add patient. And then when you add patient, you do their consent, you do their data sharing, you do their head to toe survey, finish all of their surveys, And then if you want to go back and report on yourself, that's fantastic. It's a great place to have all your medical information. Next slide. So at a patient, the doorbell rings, you leave, you come back, you're like, oh, whose questions were I answering for? Up in the left-hand corner, it says the name, and are you the caregiver or are you the patient? Because remember, you have different roles. Or is it your child who is the patient? So don't fret, but be careful. Next slide. This is the health and development survey. This is the head to toe survey. It's the very first one I want you to go to. And it will drive what other surveys get added. And the reason it's important is because it asks about all systems of the body. We think we know what 8P looks like, but 8P was only discovered so long ago. And so some researchers may never have asked about certain body systems. So it was not considered in the description of 8P. It's happened with other diseases. So we want to make sure we ask everybody about all systems of the body. Also, to my point earlier, some people have multiple diseases. So you get to report on everything. The time that's listed, where the red box that says time to complete, very conservative. I would say the head to toe survey took me 5 minutes. There are a bunch of questions, but it's yes, no, or unsure, and you'll know the answer right away. So next slide. I can't share my slides, so I'm going to say, Vanessa, can you do next slide? Okay, these are examples of the head to toe or health and development survey. Super broad. Do you have, eye or vision issues? Do you have ear or hearing issues? If you don't know whether earaches are on there, it's probably given as one of the examples, and then you'll know. If you don't, you can click unsure. If you click yes or unsure, you may get another survey added to your dashboard. If you don't click yes to cardiac, you're not going to get a cardiac survey. If 2 years from now, your family member or you develop a cardiac issue, you go into this same survey, you hit edit, you change your no to a yes, and then you'll see the cardiac survey. This is when I talk about coming back and updating when things change. This is where you do it. Next slide. This just says I have genetic testing, and we say, please upload it. I'll show you how to do that. Next. And when I said for every yes or unsure, you'll get an additional survey. Right now, they're in this screenshot, they're labeled level 2. I don't know what category they will be given under, but you'll recognize that for everything that you said yes, which is more than likely neuro, GI, and several other body systems. Next slide. This is an example of a quote level 2 survey. It's not a super deep dive. If you say no, like in question 3, you just say no and you move on to the next question. If you say yes, it asks you 2 more questions. Age of symptoms appeared, age of diagnosis. Symptom means mom or dad gut. When did you know something wasn't right? Doesn't matter if the physician believed you. It doesn't matter if your mother-in-law believed you. When did you think something was happening? Age of diagnosis is when did it make it into your medical record, or what was it recognized by a doctor? This can be the same day. This could be years apart. And that's really important data to have. Next slide. At the bottom of every level 2 survey, you can say, oh, they didn't ask me about whatever that had to do with this system. So you click additional items, yes, and then you type in what we didn't ask you about. Please don't include your child's name, because then you're identifying the data and we have to go in and de-identify it. But over in the right-hand bottom corner, maybe there are 2 things that you want to report, and it says add another item, and you add that item. So this is just things that weren't asked about in that particular system. If this is about vision, you don't start adding things about, ears. You wait for the level 2 ear. Next slide. We're almost done. So you come in 6 months from now and you're like, oh, I don't know what I did, what I didn't do. Well, we do. What you did is under completed, and what you didn't do is new or in progress. So for instance, we just added in the last month 13 new short, mostly short, surveys that have to do with neurodevelopmental disorders. And so they magically appeared in new for people that had not logged in since November because they weren't there in November. On the right, it says view, edit, and email. Edit is where you want to go in there and say, oh, I said no to this, and now it's a yes. And then you'll get an additional survey. Email is, I'm going to email these to myself, and that way I can share with my doctor when I need to. This is your data. It's, you have identified data. You can share it any way you want. We just can't. So that's the important thing, is those 3 dots on the far right of the surveys. Next. There's a quality of life survey, and you pay attention to whether it says past 7 days, past 30 days. I have a non-speaking child, so I did not answer this quality of life survey. There's another quality of life survey that says QOL disability. Both of these are optional. I encourage you to do them. I would encourage you to get all the level 2 body systems done first. If you prefer not to answer, is also an option on some of these. On this particular one, there's also an option unable to answer because of my child's condition or communication. Next slide. So what are the benefits to this? It's complementary to all of the other things that Katie and Bina talked about. It's not competing and it's not replacing. It's getting, data on your entire global community in one place where people can go back year after year after year and update it. It's not tied to a 3 or 5 year grant. So it's around for, it's here to stay. As I showed you 2 examples of those aggregate data that we could return to you, the data I said, you can use this now. This is data that tells you about how this disease looks. It's not specific to any one institution. It's important to have studies like Columbia where, they're doing a deep dive into something. The limitation is when studies are done like that, there's a limitation to where that data can go. And it's just the way research works. So one of the reasons that we as a nonprofit built this platform is so that your data can go far and wide for a very long time. So we want data on lots of AP patients from around the world. We want lots of data, so answer all the surveys. And then we want to share it for as far and long as we can. Researchers will then identify people from that data and say, oh, I'm looking for the males under the age of puberty that have clonic-tonic seizures and funny hair. And then they can recruit through us. They would have to say, here are these identity numbers. We would like these patient participants to consider our study or our clinical trial, and then we would reach out to you. If you click the box saying, reach out to me if there's a trial. Ability to do cross-disease research. 8P is a very rare syndrome. It is not unique. I share a lot of the same challenges that you all do. My daughter shares a lot of the same challenges that your family members do. And there are many, many syndromes that are like this. Angelman Fragile X are 2 of the more well-known ones. The beauty of having your data in Rare X is that researchers can look across diseases. And if they're looking at symptoms, if they're looking to develop a treatment for instance, seizures or sleep, they may not care what the cause of it is. They're looking to treat the symptom. So that's a really big plus for this. And the focus of this is ultimately for treatment development. That's not to say we're not going to have questions about caregiver quality of life or other things, but this is not surveys based on a researcher saying, I wonder why they go get a grant and then they send out this survey. This is very purposeful data collection. And we don't make up the surveys. The surveys are chosen by working groups. And the litmus test or the criteria of, is this survey going to get us the highest quality data that is needed by researchers, drug companies, and regulators like FDA and EMA. And finally, I've said this 5 times, I'll say it 6, the ability to update over and over and over. This is not the Rare X AP data collection. This is the 8P community global data collection. It is your home. It's where you go to get up to the microphone and say, this is what my life is like. And I will tell you, these are great, way to create awareness in the grocery store, at a barbecue. These don't create awareness in our doctor's office, in our neurologist's office, in biotech, in research. Data is the only way 8P is going to be known, and it's not good enough to be known. Those people need to know what life with 8P is like. What is that progression of disease? What are the burdens on the person with the disease and their family members? Next slide. I think I'm handing the microphone.
So
over to-
I'm gonna try to blow through the rest of these because I know it's been an hour. So we want to, these are separate data collections, and what we talked about today is specific to RareX, but we want to say that these data collections, as I said before, pretty emphatically is they're connecting the data to contribute to accelerating research for treatments for 8P. That is really what Project 8P is dedicated to, and RareX is also dedicated to making sure that we can support your community to collect the data that it needs and also to expand as we go forward and connect it to. All right. Sorry, my kid was choking there for like 3 seconds. So the other thing is we talked a lot about connecting data sets. Obviously, we saw the 3 that are part of Project Hero already, but there's a lot of other data sets that might enter into the 8P space over the years. Hopefully there's lots, to be honest. We don't want the research to get less, we want it to get more, and hopefully towards a cure of some sort in the future. But we want to make sure that what we comes across is that RareX has the ability through our shared governance and the infrastructure we've created to connect that data on the backside. So when there's the other opportunities that are out there that you're listing, that you're a part of maybe a data collection in Germany or something like that, we have the ability to go out and connect those in a very clear way, in a federated manner, and making that data available to the research community as a whole. We've been pretty darn good at it so far, as well as data from biopharma companies that once, if a program ends or something like that, but we really do want to interconnect all that data. One of them we are interconnecting already is this neurogenetic clinic that is happening at Children's Colorado, and there's additional sites that are being scoped. But that's really what we want to make sure that you're seeing is this is very much a connection forward data collection ecosystem. So sometimes we've said the commission a couple of times today. That's actually one of the big things that led to a lot of these collaborations. As Bina, Isa, and myself from 8P Ring 14 and Do 15Q, we created the commission. And how does that fit in with all of this? Well, it was the actual impetus of all of this. It was making sure that we could look at cross-disease things, appreciate our similarities, and respect our differences where we needed to in these data collection efforts. So it's really making sure that what we're collecting is driven by key opinion leaders in the space, the people who are actively using the data. Additionally, Bina, myself, Katie, Isa, we're out there trying to get your data used. That's really what it is. The commission that's what we do. We get it out there. We're making sure that they know that these researchers and these people who are like the forefront in this space, they know that this data exists. They know they can access it. They know they can trust it. They know they can do it pretty easily. And that's what we're doing out there for the commission. So we're really, Bina and I are always on calls and just saying like, yes, what do you want? What do you need? Here it is. Here's how you connect it. Here's how you access it. Here's how you request it. So that's really what the commission is continuing to do for the 8P community. We're shouting it from the rooftops because we want people to know what 8P is. We want people to know your kids and your heroes and how it affects your lives. So this is really where you go in. You get to see your 8P heroes. You can use the QR code. We'll send these slides out afterwards. But just as a level set, that's your email. That's your website. This is a little bit about the clinic. Again, I know we're already over time, but the clinic essentially, it's a way that you can collect biosamples. I know that 8P also supports biosample collection in different ways, but this is a way that we connect all that data back into it. We didn't even talk about the availability of that. All of these biosamples are being processed for genomics, advanced genomics, and that's being connected back into the system too, which is really, really important to know more about those breakpoints that somebody had mentioned earlier, to compare and contrast what we are seeing in the AP community. But this is just kind of showing how things are connected and shared to the system and all linked together. And the commission was really the impetus for this in terms of making sure that we were funded to do so. So this, I'm going to hand back over to Katie and Bina about the
Can you go
Yeah,
back to, but right before we do this, can you go back to our My Hero Initiative table? I just want to go back to that really quick and summarize. It's at the top. Or there's one, actually I threw one right
You
there.
actually put it in there. You have to do
I
that.
did, yeah.
Yep. There you go.
So now that you've heard everything from Rex, I just want to come back to this table and really highlight that everything is linked. And when we say the My Hero Initiative, it's the idea of solving the 8P puzzle. It's taking our patient-driven goals and utilizing programs and activities to help solve this puzzle. So right now, there's 3 pieces here, but in the future, there's going to be more. And that's kind of what Vanessa was highlighting on there. And I really just want to point that out to everyone. I also want to add that you do not have to participate in each component. Participation in all components is voluntary. So you could only be in one component or just 2 components. You could join one now and in 6 months join another. So it's completely voluntary and participation is not required. Pina, do you want to add to this at all?
No, I mean, I just want you all to know that we're here to like walk you through it, meet personally with you on Zoom, on a phone call, honestly, whatever's convenient. I mean, this is what Katie is, officially joining the Project 8P team to do primarily. And I'm always thinking of all of our 8P heroes, and you all know that. So just don't feel like, if you feel overwhelmed or you like, even myself, I mean, I go through the surveys and I'm making sure I'm answering the questions, and then I go back and I think about, I'll go back to it, I'll save it for later. And so that's totally fine. We're just here to be with you, just to make sure we honestly achieve a lot of our goals. We have researchers very much interested in this data already, and we're like, wait, we're still, aggregating this, we're still enrolling families. So it's just an exciting time for us as a community. There's one question, Vanessa, that an AP mom had asked, and she just asked for a summarized overview of the AP patient conditions that participated and how to access aggregated data. And Lee's actually a scientist, so she's probably coming wearing that hat as well.
Yeah. So every month, patients who are participants who are on the RAREX registry will get an email basically saying it's kind of like something like coming soon. Here's some frequently asked questions that we're hearing. How many people have requested data as a whole for RAREX? Then once a quarter, we really are dedicated to making sure that when data is made available to researchers and clinicians, it's as clean as possible. So we do data cuts once a quarter, meaning that we do a full data cut. Like we're saying this is the date we're cutting off, and then we're making sure all that data is clean. So Megan talked a little bit about like, if you put your child's name and the other, and you put it in there, we have to remove that. Making sure that the information that's coming in looks to be real. Sometimes these systems can be, like there's errant data that's in there, or in the places that, okay, mom and dad enrolled the same child, making sure that those things are linked. And so once a quarter, we're going to do data cuts so that the patient advocacy group, Sabina and Katie, will get basically a download of all the data tables and the summaries of what's coming in. They will also de-identified. It's aggregated data. But basically, they're going to see like who's completed this survey, who's enrolled, how many, like what are the genetic breakdowns and that sort of thing. And so they get that kind of snapshot, and you will also get it as a patient participant. So they're going to get a sneak preview. They're going to do probably some, Facebooks around it too. But we'll also get that same information for the aggregate snapshot once a quarter. Again, we're making sure that data that's coming out in that way is cleaned as much as possible, because we know sometimes there's, mistakes, or somebody enrolls twice or something like that. So we want to make sure when you're seeing those data points that you're like, okay, I'm confident this is clean data. I can derive, especially if you're a scientist, you can derive some hypotheses, right? You can think, okay, I'm seeing this, maybe I should do a data request to do an actual research analysis on it or something. So that's what the cadence is, but you will have access to those. We're also working on a navigator that's off of the system, because we have all of those other data sets that are coming in. We're also working on a navigator with our data aggregator and federator, the Broad Institute, to see what we can do to make it a little bit more easy when we have these other data sets coming in. Because as I said, We don't want these to be the only three things. We honestly don't. We want to be able to connect other data sets, the Columbia data set, maybe the Simons eventually, Citizen, if that ends up being something that you guys do. We want to make sure we're able to do that and actually bring it together so you guys can see it. It's not going to happen overnight, but just know we do have our eyes on the prize in this collaboration for sure.
I just want to add something else. As a parent who has cursed very many assessments over the years, very many inappropriate assessments, I'm all about keeping the burden to you as minimal. And I said to you, oh, the surveys are pretty short. Most are. We have just added the Vineland. If you've taken it, you know it. You may hate it, but it is the measuring stick that researchers look for in this population. So set up like, once I finish the Vineland, I'm getting a piece of cheesecake or something. You don't have to do it, you can set it aside to do, but the reason we're doing this is because all the researchers going forward want this information. And 2 years from now, when Dr. Schmo from University of wherever comes to BNNKD and says, hey, I want to do this study at my university, and I'm going to ask all these questions, and I'm going to ask the Vineland, they can say, guess what? We got all of our patients over there in this data collection program called the 8P data collection program. The data is free, it's de-identified, and it's got the Vineland, so we've got you covered. So we're trying to make this so that in the future, researchers will only ask what we're not asking. It saves them time and money, and it'll save you time. And that this is the central place. This is the go-to for your global community. And I said this earlier, I'm just going to say it again. This is yours. It's as good and robust as you guys make it. So encourage each other, remind each other. If you do it, and it didn't take as long as you thought, go on Facebook or Instagram and say, you know what, today, I finally feel like I did something for my child. Because most days we don't feel like we can do anything. And those treatments and those findings seem farther away than we want them to be. This is now. And so I would encourage you to encourage each other. If you have any technical issues, Vanessa, are you done with your set of slides? Okay, sorry.
We can do that.
Interrupted Vanessa's.
Nope.
Okay. All right.
We'll
This is
so.
one last plug I'm going to give you for why you should do this now and not 6 months from now. RareX had some really incredible philanthropists who reached out and said, we think you should do something exciting with this data. So we are going to advertise to thousands of researchers and hope that hundreds show up in May. And they're going to analyze data from 25 diseases, and yours is one of them. So think about it. There's 10,852 rare diseases that we know of, and 25 are going to be on the microscope to be looked at, sliced and diced and analyzed, starting in May for 2 months. And you will be one of 25 group diseases that's in that analysis. And why do researchers want to do it? Because they're going to win grants. $50,000 grants. So next slide. If you can get your genetic report uploaded by Rare Disease Day, February 28th, and I've got a screenshot that'll show you how you go to documents, hit upload your scanned report, and you're good to go. Just make sure that you're in your child's profile. You then get another month to finish those surveys, including the Vineland. If you get all that done by March 30th, that's going to be that data cut that Vanessa's talking about. That data is going to get cleaned, and starting May 1st for 2 months, those researchers from around the world are going to be competing to solve problems, find novel findings and things like that. So I highly encourage you to do that, because next slide. This is what I told you before. It's great. Next slide. This is better. This is what May and June are going to look like. And don't you want to be in that? Don't you want to be seen? So March 30th is your deadline. February 28th is your deadline for the genetic report. And Vanessa, can you skip down to slide 63, and then we're going to come back.
Oh, so we're gonna talk about genetic reports. If you go into, so you're going to see this in 2 places, right? 8P Registry has an area to upload genetic report, and RareX does too. So Megan's going to go over how to do it for RareX. If you've already done it for 8P, you do not have to do it twice. Okay. So if you've already enrolled it, if you go into the 8P registry and you upload it, just know that it has to be in one of the places. But Megan's going to go over what it looks like for RareX, but just make sure it gets in one of the places. Okay. Sorry, Megan, go.
If you're not in the AP registry, I would do this before you even do the head to toe survey. Just get it over with. So you click on documents on the left-hand side, you click on upload, you put in your scan report, you label it genetic, and it's there. And it's there a year from now when you're like, oh, I need that genetic report. Oh, I can download it from the 8P data collection program. So that is that. If you have any other reports, at this time, we're not what they call curating or analyzing them, so you don't need to upload anything else. We hope to be able to do that in the future. If we can go back to slide 59, if you have any issues, you don't like our privacy policy, or you're not sure what we meant by a certain question, or well, password is, you can fix that on your own, it's like a forget password thing. But if there's any technical or content issues, don't hesitate to email rarexsupport@globalgenes.org, and there's no hyphen. But please CC Katie, because we want Katie to feel like, you know what? Our community is not having any issues, or wow, our community is really having some confusion about that one survey. And so that way your organization is policing our quality. So you don't have to write to her directly. You just send the email to us and CC her. That way, you know, she sees how things are going. Is there anything that I left out, or any questions that you all have? We know we kept you longer, but you all have so many opportunities. We wanted to make sure you understood how they worked.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself. Otherwise, we can go over that slide with the goals that we have for 2023 broadly for participation.
Was that with the early one?
It has the raffles on it too.
Oh, sorry about that. We're going to go back. Sorry, guys. There we go.
Awesome. Katie, you want to explain this?
Yes, sorry. So our goal for 2023 is to have 200 8P heroes registered in the Chromosome 8P registry and the RareX 8P data collection program. For every 25 participants that are registered in both platforms, there will be a giveaway. The participants that are registered in both platforms will be eligible for drawings at the following tiers. As you can see here, at 25 heroes in both platforms, we're going to give away 4 $50 Amazon gift cards. Once we reach 50 heroes, we're going to give away an iPad. Once we reach 75, we're going to again give away 4 $50 gift cards. And at 100, another iPad. And you can see the pattern continues till we reach 200. Any questions about this?
This is a great reason to encourage your other families to get on the ball.
Be our cheerleaders.
The other is, again, you know, it's called the Accelerated Open Science Data Challenge. I call it an awesome contest that will put all eyes on you if you're in it, and you're not going to be seen or counted if you're not. So those deadlines again are February 28th for genetic reports in one of the data collections, and March 30th to finish your surveys.
So yeah, we'll be connecting with Bina and Katie over the, they're going to get notifications. We're going to let them know how many people are enrolled, or to keep them in kind of constant contact with us as things are progressing, to keep them on this, and then they will help them do the drawing as needed. So
You guys
I also just want to point out how everything is truly synchronized and linked, and that's why we have organized this giveaway that way.
Yeah, and I really wanted to thank, you know, the RareX team. So Megan, thank you so much. It's so important. Honestly, Megan is like one of the OGs and really understanding registries and as a parent has gone through all of the challenges and difficulties. So she is truly sharing her personal experiences and why this is going to be so much easier and better for everyone involved in understanding. I mean, we're just in such a great time for the foundation to have this option. And so it is a really big, important part of what we're trying to do in this initiative. And Kelly is here to also help and walk through the enrollment process on the Rare X data collection program side. And she's also facilitating biospecimens and getting the mobile phlebotomist to your home and things like that. So Kelly's on the team. Vanessa has been a partner in crime for the commission at large, which we've spent so much time together on. And so there's just a lot of exciting things, and you're getting to just meet, some of these wonderful people here that are here for us. So thank you. I wanted to thank all three of you so much. And then we wanted to do the drawing, the exciting part of the night. So thanks for staying on for so long. Katie, you want to spin the wheel or whatever that is?
There is one question about how many people are on the AP registry on your side.
Yeah, so I'll answer that, Leah. So we basically, when we launched the Chromosome AP registry, we had close to 100. And we have updated consents. So the ones that have updated their consents, the numbers are around 50. So we just want to get back up to that 100. I think that's fairly easy to do. And of course, now there's the step 2 piece with the Rare X. So that's why some of the incentives are kind of to combine both.
And if you're unsure about your participation status, just shoot me an email. I'm going to stop our recording.